welcome to this deep dive into, well, what is arguably one of the most frustrating, just universally shared experiences of being human.
Oh, absolutely. It really is.
Right. So we're looking at a stack of sources today that explore human psychology, evolution, and this whole concept known as the scarcity brain.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept.
It really is. And our mission today is to unpack a paradox that I guarantee you, sitting there listening to this, have experienced personally. I mean, it is the deep, sometimes incredibly uncomfortable question of why the concept of an rarely, if ever, actually feels like enough.
Yeah, and it's a paradox that bleeds into absolutely every aspect of our lives. It dictates how we manage our bank accounts, how we navigate our careers, and, well, even how we evaluate our personal relationships.
Right, exactly. So I want you listening to this right now to just think about your own life goals for a second. Like, think about that promotion you spent 2 brutal years chasing.
Or maybe, trying to hit a certain follower count on social media.
Yeah. Or reaching a specific financial milestone that you just swore to yourself would finally let you relax and breathe. You put in the late hours, you stress, you sacrifice time with your
But
family.
you cross the finish line. You actually achieve it.
You do.
Mm.
But why is it that the moment you actually secure the prize, the satisfaction just, it almost instantly evaporates? You look around from the summit of this mountain you just spent years climbing, and within a matter of days or, sometimes just hours, you're already scouting the horizon for the next mountain. Okay, let's unpack this because it feels like a fundamental flaw in human design. Like we are trapped on this hedonic treadmill and the speed just keeps increasing.
Well, framing it as a flaw is a very modern way of looking at it. But to truly grasp why you feel this constant, almost vibrating dissatisfaction today, we really have to completely remove ourselves from the modern context.
Right, we have to look back.
Exactly. We have to look at the historical root cause. We need to look at the prehistoric environment that originally engineered the human brain through, millions of years of natural selection.
Right, because we are dealing with evolutionary mismatch theory here. We did not evolve in a world of algorithmic grocery delivery and climate-controlled apartments and, guaranteed caloric surpluses.
Not at all. I mean, the brain you have right now was forged in the Pleistocene epoch. So that's an environment defined by extreme volatility and just relentless scarcity.
Which is hard for us to even picture today.
It really is. But imagine waking up every single morning facing a severe caloric deficit and total environmental unpredictability. Securing enough energy to simply keep a highly metabolically demanding human brain functioning was a constant, grueling challenge.
Yeah, and shelter was precarious.
Very. And a minor laceration could easily lead to a fatal infection because, well, there was no concept of germ theory, let alone antibiotics.
And real predators. Like the threat of predation was an everyday reality, not some theoretical anxiety you read about.
Exactly. For the vast majority of human history, just securing enough resources to survive the week was an overwhelming success. Evolution simply didn't design the brain for long-term satisfaction.
So in that context, a brain that allows you to feel deeply satisfied and content would actually be like a lethal liability. Because if you feel satisfied, you stop foraging, right? You let your guard down.
That is the core mechanism of the scarcity brain. Evolution did not optimize the human nervous system for long-term happiness or, deep philosophical contentment. It optimized strictly for survival.
Survival and reproduction, right?
Yes, strictly survival and reproduction. Every emotion, every instinct, every lingering fear, and every sudden desire was ruthlessly selected to increase the probability of staying alive just long enough to pass on genetic material.
So a hominid who secured a large meal and thought, I'm perfectly content, I don't need to look for food tomorrow, that guy didn't make it.
Right. He was rapidly selected out of the gene pool by the first unexpected winter storm. The genes that survived belonged to the individuals who were perpetually anxious about the next meal, even while they were literally chewing the current one.
Wow. I often hear people compare this to running outdated software on new hardware. But looking at these sources, I think it's actually the exact inverse.
How so?
Well, it is more like we are running a highly sophisticated, modern civilization, like this world of massive abundance and complex social hierarchies and digital interconnectedness. We're running all that modern software on ancient, hypervigilant hardware.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's like taking a military-grade threat detection radar designed for a literal war zone and plugging it into a quiet suburban living room. Of course, it's going to misinterpret the neighbor's cat as a hostile insurgency. The hardware is just screaming, completely overwhelmed by inputs it wasn't designed to process.
That is a much more accurate visualization, yeah. The external environment of human civilization has changed dramatically and exponentially, especially in, well, the last few centuries.
But our biology hasn't.
Right, our biological hardware evolves at a glacial pace. It simply has not had time to adapt to abundance. So the ancient neurological pathways that kept our ancestors hypervigilant and constantly dissatisfied, they still govern our behavior today.
So today, most people living in developed nations aren't hunting for literal sustenance to survive the winter.
No, instead, that primal drive has been redirected. So instead of hunting for food, people today hunt for promotions. They hunt for status, recognition, money, influence, and followers.
So the objects of our desire have completely morphed to fit the modern landscape. But the underlying machinery, that frantic, visceral need to acquire, hoard, and secure, that it is identical to the instinct that drove early humans to hoard grain or flint.
Precisely. And this brings us to the actual neurobiological mechanics of how this survival mechanism operates in our daily lives. To understand the scarcity brain, we have to look at how neuroscientists describe the brain as a prediction machine.
A production machine.
Yeah, the brain doesn't just passively experience reality, it is constantly, obsessively scanning the environment, making probabilistic models of the future. It is looking for opportunities to exploit, spotting potential dangers, and trying to reduce uncertainty.
And the fuel for this prediction machine, right, the chemical messenger that compels us to act on those predictions, is dopamine.
Yes, dopamine is central here.
But the sources we are looking at make a really crucial distinction here about how dopamine actually functions, which kind of contradicts how it is usually talked about in pop culture. It is not just the pleasure chemical, right?
No, that pop culture definition of dopamine as a mere reward molecule misses the actual elegance of the mechanism. Dopamine is indeed central to the brain's reward circuitry, but its primary function is to signal reward prediction error, or RPE.
Okay, reward prediction error. What does that mean exactly?
It means it doesn't fire to reward you for having something. It fires to motivate you to get something. It spikes during the anticipation of a reward, not the acquisition of it. It evolved specifically to keep us striving and never fully arriving.
Oh, wow. So it's essentially the neurochemistry of wanting, not the neurochemistry of liking.
Exactly. Let's look at the underlying mechanism. When your brain predicts that an action will lead to a valuable resource, whether that's a high-calorie meal or, say, an email offering you a new job, dopamine levels surge.
To get you to go after it.
Right, to narrow your focus and mobilize your body to pursue that resource. But once the resource is acquired, the uncertainty is resolved. The prediction has come true. At that moment, dopamine levels don't just level off.
What do?
They actually plummet below your baseline.
Wait, really? Below baseline?
Yes. That sharp drop in dopamine is what you experience as that deflating feeling of emptiness immediately after achieving a massive goal. The brain shuts off the reward signal because the resource is secured, and it needs to reset the system so you're motivated to pursue the next critical resource.
Man, that perfectly explains the modern phenomenon of online shopping. I mean, the thrill, the whole dopamine hit is entirely wrapped up in the browsing, the checkout process, and obsessively refreshing the tracking number.
Exactly, the anticipation.
Yeah, but the moment the cardboard box is actually sitting on your kitchen counter, the thrill is gone. The item itself rarely delivers the joy the anticipation promised, because the dopamine was never about enjoying the item. It was a biological trick to get you to acquire it.
It is a brilliantly effective trick for keeping a species alive in a barren environment. I mean, it ensures you never stop seeking. But in a world of one-click purchasing and artificial abundance, it becomes a physiological trap.
Okay, I want to pause here because I need to push back on the implications of this. Because I'm looking at how these sources describe this relentless dopamine-driven pursuit as a kind of evolutionary baggage.
Sure, go ahead.
But wait, aren't ambition and drive completely essential to human progress? Like, if we were always satisfied, if we didn't have this scarcity brain, would we ever invent anything or move forward as a society? Would we have cured polio? Or built international space stations, or engineered the very microphones we're speaking into right now?
That's a very valid question.
Right. I mean, it feels a bit dangerous to villainize the exact biological mechanism that literally built modern civilization.
What's fascinating here is that your pushback highlights the central tension of the human condition. And the source material doesn't dismiss ambition at all. In a world of genuine scarcity, that relentless drive was undeniably absolute wisdom.
Because it keeps you alive.
Exactly. The individuals who constantly wanted more, who were never satisfied with a meager harvest, were the ones who innovated. They were the ones who developed better tools and stored enough surplus to survive cataclysms. The drive itself is not inherently villainous, it is a powerful engine.
Right. So the engine works.
The engine works beautifully, but we have to differentiate between purposeful, problem-solving ambition and the blind, pathological accumulation that happens when that engine is uncoupled from necessity.
Ah,
Ambition built hospitals and infrastructure, yes. But that same unchecked mechanism operating in a modern world of potential abundance where our basic survival is already largely secured, well, it drives people to amass billions of dollars they could never spend in 1,000 lifetimes.
while feeling intensely anxious that they might lose it, yeah.
Exactly. The issue isn't the drive itself. It is that the biological mechanism lacks an internal kill switch for enough. It does not know how to shut off once abundance is achieved.
So it is a failure of context. I mean, it's like the engine was designed to propel a tractor through deep mud, and now we are revving it in neutral, in a paved parking lot, just burning out the gears.
And causing immense psychological distress in the process. We continue to compete, to compare our worth against our neighbors, and to accumulate relentlessly because the brain's default setting is, well, gather more just in case.
Just in case, yeah. Which brings up the flip side of this neurochemical coin. If dopamine is the accelerator, compelling us to blindly acquire, there has to be a braking system, or rather a persistent alarm system that prevents us from ever getting too comfortable with what we have.
Yes, and the sources dive deep into how our brains process threats versus rewards.
Right, so let's move from the drive to accumulate to the persistent fear of losing it.
Yeah.
What is that alarm system?
That alarm system is governed by what behavioral economists and psychologists call the negativity bias, which is closely linked to the concept of loss aversion. Just as the brain is not designed for contentment, it is also not designed for objective realism.
Meaning it skews the data.
Heavily. It has a profound, hardwired asymmetry in how it processes positive and negative information. The brain is disproportionately drawn toward what it lacks rather than what it possesses, and it hyper-focuses on potential threats to whatever it already has.
You know, the evolutionary math on that makes complete sense to me. I mean, if you make a mistake and miss a positive opportunity, say you fail to notice a ripe apple on a tree, the consequence is pretty minor. You miss a snack, you can try again later.
Right, you survive.
But if you make a mistake and miss a negative threat, like you fail to notice a predator in the tall grass, the consequence is absolute.
Yeah.
You are removed from the gene pool. So the brain is essentially programmed to generate false alarms rather than risk a single missed threat.
That is the exact asymmetry. In evolutionary terms, a false positive, like being startled by the wind rustling a bush, costs very few calories. But a false negative, assuming a rustling bush is just the wind when it is actually a leopard, costs you your life.
Yeah, that's game over.
Exactly. So we evolved an amygdala that treats almost all ambiguity as a life-threatening crisis. This translates into modern life in profound ways. It explains why criticism is remembered more vividly than praise.
Oh, for sure.
And it is why psychological studies repeatedly prove that the psychological pain of losing $50 is vastly more intense than the joy of finding $50. Losses register heavier, deeper, and longer than equivalent gains.
Man, this completely explains the excruciating reality of the modern workplace. You can deliver a major presentation, and afterward, your colleagues give you 10 pieces of glowing, genuine praise.
Right.
And then one person offers a single, mildly critical piece of feedback about a slide. When you're lying awake at 2 a.m., you aren't basking in the 10 compliments. Your brain is obsessively deconstructing that one mild criticism, treating it as this huge existential threat to your social standing.
Because to your ancient brain, social rejection historically meant exile from the tribe, which meant certain death in the wilderness. Yeah, the brain doesn't differentiate between the biological threat of a predator and the social threat of a critical performance review. It activates the same sympathetic nervous system response.
So cortisol floods your system.
Cortisol floods your system, your heart rate elevates, and your focus narrows entirely on the negative stimuli, completely blinding you to the overwhelming evidence of your safety and competence.
Going back to our earlier analogies, it is not just a sensitive smoke detector. It was designed to be obnoxious because ignoring a fire meant death. But today, modern society is constantly just blowing harmless smoke at the detector, keeping us in a state of perpetual panic.
That's a great way to put it.
And what is so striking in these sources is the realization that biology isn't acting alone here. We are not just battling an ancient evolutionary hangover, we are actively being conditioned by the environment we were raised in. Let's talk about the blank slate theory.
This is a crucial pivot in the research. We have to look at the blank slate concept in the context of learned inadequacy. While we have these biological predispositions for vigilance and acquisition, the specific manifestations of our modern anxieties are largely learned.
So no child is born feeling inadequate.
Exactly. No child is born feeling a deep sense of inadequacy about their socioeconomic status. A toddler in a sandbox does not look at their plastic shovel and experience a crisis of self-worth because another toddler has a brand name shovel.
Right, they aren't born with brand loyalty or status anxiety.
Precisely. That feeling of inadequacy, that specific persistent fear of not being enough, of not having enough to be deemed valuable by the tribe, is learned from an environment that relentlessly signals scarcity, even amidst abundance.
It constantly signals not enough. And the sources point out that this conditioning is deeply entrenched in our cultural history. It didn't just start with 20th century advertising campaigns trying to sell us, mouthwash or luxury cars.
No, it goes back much further.
Right. Human institutions, belief systems, and historical religions have spent centuries weaponizing the scarcity brain. I mean, think about the historical framing of labor and contentment. Throughout various eras, the mere desire for peaceful contentment has often been framed as a moral failing.
Yes, as laziness or the sin of sloth.
Exactly.
No.
Meanwhile, relentless ambition, endless toil, and the constant accumulation of resources have been elevated as the ultimate virtues.
When agricultural societies first began producing large surpluses, it created the first major social hierarchies. To maintain those hierarchies, you need cultural narratives that compel the majority of the population to continue producing surplus long after their own basic caloric needs are met.
Wow, so the system needed the anxiety to keep running.
Yes. So, historical institutions naturally evolved ideologies that reinforce this behavior. When you combine a biological system that is neurochemically incapable of feeling sustained satisfaction with a cultural and historical system that tells you that you are morally inadequate unless you constantly produce and acquire, well, you create a perfect storm of modern anxiety.
It is a devastating combination. The external circumstances of our lives can improve to a degree our ancestors would view as literal magic. I mean, we have on-demand clean water, structurally sound housing, global communication networks, and astonishing medical care, but the internal alarm bell just changes its pitch and continues to ring.
It does. So the inevitable question the sources lead us to is, what is the intervention?
Right, because we cannot simply erase millions of years of evolutionary history. We cannot fundamentally rewire the dopamine system or, surgically remove the negativity bias. How do we break the cycle and actually live peacefully with this ancient brain?
The shift in perspective here is profound. The key takeaway from synthesizing all these sources is that this phenomenon, this endless grasping, is not a personal moral failure.
Okay, that's relieving to hear.
It is not evidence that human beings are inherently irreparably selfish or greedy. Understanding the evolutionary mechanics completely changes the conversation from one of judgment to one of environmental design.
So instead of asking, why are people so greedy, what should we be asking?
We must start asking, what kinds of environments create genuine security? If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to recognize that the scarcity brain is only one facet of human nature. Reducing human behavior strictly to ruthless survival and resource hoarding is a drastically incomplete reading of evolutionary biology.
Right, because human nature isn't just about survival and scarcity.
Exactly. It also fundamentally includes immense hardwired capacities for compassion, deep curiosity, altruistic cooperation, and creativity. Those traits are just as evolutionarily valid and crucial to our survival as the stress response.
Homo sapiens survived the Pleistocene not just by hoarding grain, but by banding together.
Yes, by sharing resources within the tribe, by caring for the injured, and by communicating complex ideas.
So it is a matter of which traits the environment incentivizes. If you place a human in a zero-sum environment where resources are artificially restricted and social status is hyper-competitive, the scarcity brain will dominate. But if you design environments that foster psychological safety, the brain doesn't need to dedicate all its bandwidth to threat detection. It can redirect that energy into cooperation and creative problem solving.
Exactly. The future will not belong to the strongest, wealthiest, or most intelligent. It will belong to societies that learn to work with the human brain instead of demanding it behave as though evolution never happened. They will design systems that calm the negativity bias rather than exploiting it.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to navigate your actual life, your career, and your relationships today? How do you apply this?
It means that genuine wisdom begins when we learn to distinguish between two very different voices in our own head.
Yes, the dual voices.
There is the voice of genuine purpose, the pursuits that actually bring you deep meaning, connection, and flow. And then there's the loud, frantic echo of an ancient survival instinct, that scarcity brain that is screaming for more money, a better title, or more social validation, simply because it lacks the biological circuitry to recognize when enough is enough. Cultivating the ability to pause and identify which of those two voices is driving your behavior is arguably the most vital psychological skill a person can develop in an age of abundance. It allows you to step off the hedonic treadmill, even just momentarily, and observe the machinery rather than being controlled by it.
It is a profound shift in agency. I want to ask you, listening right now, to take a second and truly reflect on your own relationship with this concept of enough.
It's a hard question to face.
It is. Look back over the last year. When is the last time you felt genuinely, deeply satisfied? And I don't mean the momentary buzzing hit of dopamine when you bought something new or when you got a notification on your phone. I mean a deep, exhaling contentment, a quiet moment where you felt satisfied, not because you had finally managed to acquire everything you ever wanted, but because you recognized that the ancient biological alarm had just, for a fleeting moment, finally fallen silent.
It is a rare state to achieve, but recognizing the mechanics of why it is rare is the first step toward reclaiming it.
It is. And it echoes a really haunting question drawn directly from our source material today. If your brain was strictly designed for a world of constant scarcity, what does it genuinely need to finally feel safe in a world of potential abundance?
That is the ultimate question of our era, and I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over, building on this idea of how deeply our environments shape our neurochemistry.
Let's hear it.
Think about the digital environments we spend our time in every single day. The applications on your phone, the endless frictionless scrolling feeds, the highly targeted algorithmic advertisements. How much of our modern digital economy is not just accidentally triggering your stress response, but is intentionally, meticulously engineered to hijack and monetize your scarcity brain?
Wow, that's a chilling thought.
These platforms are designed to manufacture artificial scarcity and social comparison to harvest your attention. So consider this. If every single one of us woke up tomorrow and suddenly felt like we truly had enough, if those ancient alarm bells went permanently quiet and we stopped buying things to soothe our evolutionary anxiety, would our current economic system even survive the week?
That is a massive question.
Or would we be forced to build an entirely new society, one actually based on the compassion, cooperation, and creativity that are equally written into our DNA?
Imagine what that society would look like. Imagine reaching the top of that mountain we talked about at the beginning, looking out at the view, and instead of immediately looking for a higher peak, just staying there, enjoying the view, knowing that you have finally arrived. Until next time, thanks for taking this deep dive.